Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Ask an OpenShift Admin. I am joined today by two of my fellow teammates here at Red Hat, Andrew Sullivan and Christian Hernandez. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. It is a phenomenal, a fantastic day here on the Ask an OpenShift Admin live stream. So I'll get to that in just a moment, but not before. Christian, welcome to the show yet again.
Yeah. Thank you. I always love coming on here. I always say that, my background's in, operations, being an admin. So I always like to jump back in, get back to what my first love was before this whole weird GitOpsy thing. My life, so.
It's not weird.
So thank you.
And now you're a double trader, if you will, right? You're here to talk about Windows, and you're the GitOps guy.
It's the two sides. It's like a dyad, right? Two sides.
Yeah. Right. You're off my Christmas card list.
Yeah. I'm off that, so I won't get a picture like you have up there of the squirrel.
Yeah,
the card, right? That'll be your Christmas card.
Oh my god!
It's. I was actually talking with my wife earlier this morning, talking about the room is a shade of green, so I couldn't do like a green screen in the squirrel picture, but I could do blue. And then I could just randomly phase it out for other things, using some sort of software.
Yeah, that would be fun.
But no, so I was extremely exuberant here at the opening, and that's because I realized about a week ago, actually, that today, or yesterday, actually, the 14th, September 14th, was the 1-year anniversary of the Ask an OpenShift Admin office hour.
All right, yeah.
Like, it's pretty wild, right? Like, we've been doing this for a year now, and thank you all for watching and tuning in.
Yeah, very much so. I took the opportunity to collect some metrics around what we have done in that past year. So if it's not obvious, right, from the title of this stream, this is episode 43. So effectively in 42 shows, we have been averaging right around 1,000 views per video.
Wow.
Which is
pretty good.
Pretty impressive, right? Yeah. I mean, this is
a highly technical show, supposedly.
Yeah. And so for something that is both technical as well as a live stream, which, the three of us have had lengthy conversations around things like content discovery, right? How do we make sure that people can find this information afterwards? How do we make sure that it is, relevant and evergreen? Marketing people love the term evergreen. So I feel I am thoroughly humbled by our audience and your willingness to participate and our ability to, just get the information out there and hopefully it's helpful. You two know me really well. We've been on, countless meetings together of like, tell me if I'm wrong. Like, I love it when you all call me out, and like, that's what we're here for. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, it's just shy or just over 41,000 views on YouTube alone. So that doesn't include Twitch. That doesn't include back when we started, when we were doing what is the Twitter thing? Periscope.
Yeah.
We did Facebook for a little bit. So that's just YouTube. Over the last 90 days, because that's all we pulled. Across the videos that are available, we have 1,964 hours of watch time.
That's insane.
So that is the equivalent of Christian sitting in front of his computer for 82 solid days nonstop, watching nothing but this. So I am so sorry.
Which is it's how I became an OpenShift expert. Right? That's what it takes before just sitting there.
And then just a couple more statistics around that. So a couple of top episodes. So all-time highest views is episode 20, where we had Peter Lauterbach on to talk about OpenShift virtualization. And that one has just over 3,200 views, I think. The next most popular one was one that I only half participated in, which I find hilarious. And that was episode 3, where Christian and Reese Oxenham, and Reese will be joining us in a few weeks to talk about bare metal nodes. But Christian and Reese hosted the first hour talking about the assisted installer. Mm-hmm. And then no surprise, the third most popular episode was when Robbie Jerome joined us to talk about VMware, OpenShift on VMware, which we've been talking about bringing the VMware folks back on. So I don't know if Robbie will join us, but perhaps one of the folks on his team will be able to join. So lots of stuff happening there.
And we've already got a question in chat today.
Yeah.
So when you're done, let's get
okay.
to
I've got two more statistics to cover. So the top couple of episodes from just a minute's watched. So in the last 90 days, again, that was all we pulled the watch statistics for, if I could speak this morning. So the most watched episode has been the high availability episode. Mm-hmm. And I think that one had, now I don't have it up anymore, but that one was the highest by a 15% margin. The next was compliance and security. And then last but not least, or in third place, I should say, was ACM, Advanced Cluster Manager. So kind of expected topics there, right? I like looking at these things because it gives me an idea of what's interesting to you all. So, and always, please don't ever hesitate to send me suggestions or requests for topics. I love those. I'm going through doing show planning now. I've got a framework of topics out through mid-November, and then it starts getting weird because of holidays and PTO and all of that other stuff. But
we have entered what my wife calls the burrs, the fun months with all the holidays. Yeah.
Oh, the burrs. I was like, what? Oh, wait.
September, October, November, December.
Yeah. Like.
So yeah, please don't ever hesitate. You can reach out on social media, Practical Andrew on Twitter or andrew.sullivan@redhat.com via email. Don't ever hesitate to reach out with a request or a suggestion for a topic. And then the last one that I have is kind of a simple one. If you don't know, we stream simultaneously to 3 different places. So we stream to Twitch, of course. We stream to the OpenShift YouTube channel, and we stream to the Red Hat YouTube channel. So long term, because Twitch, of course, rolls videos off, the OpenShift YouTube channel accounts for about 64% of our traffic of our watch time. So it's, OpenShift folks love to talk about OpenShift or hear me talk about OpenShift anyways.
Well, yeah, who would have thought the OpenShift channel the OpenShift admin show would be popular on the OpenShift channel.
Yeah.
So,
Shocking.
Which is not to say we don't love and appreciate our Red Hat YouTube channel watchers. So
that's right.
No, absolutely.
Jump on over.
Yeah,
and
wherever you want to watch is fine.
I will also, for those who've been watching for a while, you remember back in the mid-20s, episode 24, 25, something like that, was when we added the Red Hat YouTube channel as a streaming destination. And that team has been simply phenomenal.
Yeah.
So all of the, that fancy intro graphic that you see, all of the other stuff, that's all them. And they've done just a great job of both the public facing stuff, as well as helping, me and Chris with the organization and getting better at the promotional side of things and all of that. So I can't thank them enough. All right, I'm done rambling and talking about us and the stream. So Chris, you said that there was a question.
There is a question, but I would like to say one other thing. Congratulations to Christian. Last week was his 7th year here at Red Hat, and that is
thank you.
Quite an
Thank you
accomplishment. I feel like
it is. Yeah, it feels just like yesterday. So yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. In 5 more months, Red Hat would be my longest employer. So here we go.
Fancy.
So,
wow.
How many of those years have you spent watching me?
Oh my, yeah. It's
anyway,
one seventh, right? Because it's a year anniversary. 1/7.
Well, congratulations, Christian.
Thank you.
Seriously, it's great to have you here at Red Hat. We really appreciate you. So the question from R Hope 9 today is: the only supported way to install Quay is using the Nuba operator, using the OCS operator to get Nuba installed. Does this mean that this is a way to use Nuba that is supported for other things than Quay? That's a really good question, and I don't know if that's
so the answer is that Nuba is supported as long as you're using OCS.
Yeah.
So if you're using OCS, use Nuba. It's object storage. It's I guess ODF. Have we made that switch to ODF
in docs? No. In
docs, like marketing,
yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we're halfway there. So yeah, ODF. If you're using ODF, you can use the Nuba. You can use that for for your applications if you'd like. So,
Yeah,
but
and
Nuba
just
standalone, I don't think so. Only in Quay, I think.
yeah, and just to clarify, so ODF is OpenShift Data Foundation, which is the rebranded name for OpenShift Container Storage, because it's more than just what was traditionally OCS, right? It has evolved to include a bunch of other things, not the least of which is, of course, Nuba for object storage. You'll be seeing OADP coming out before the end of this year, is what their KCS says. So,
Backup stuff.
Yeah.
And that team, the ODF team, we have a show slot for them where it changes out storage admins and data scientists every other week kind of deal. So it's a nice rotation every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. So you can catch storage and people then using that storage to do data science with it. So yeah, pretty cool stuff.
I just realized that I used another acronym, OADP, OpenShift APIs for Data Protection.
There you
Nice.
go.
Cool.
And there
Thank you,
is,
because I didn't want to ask.
Yeah, I'm gonna post. I set a KCS, so I'm gonna post that KCS into the chat here, where it talks about when that will be available, and we'll of course talk about that once it is available. We'll invite.
Yeah, it's a hot topic. I just talked to one of my friends at a company that does API security, and she was just telling me about like how their customers are pretty much blown away by all the stuff they find that's just like, open and available.
Yeah,
unprotected.
Well, it's funny because one of my responsibilities is to work with partners, and I work with several storage partners, and they ask me, what is this OADP? What is this data protection? Is that something that is only Red Hat, only OCS, or is that something anybody can use?
Of course.
And it's an open set of APIs. It's an open set of capabilities that we would love for it to become kind of a standard, if you will, for data protection. So keep an eye on that one. Like I said, we'll definitely talk about that once the time comes. So yeah, delayed due to the Valero CSI driver. Yeah, I know that there's been some complications there. So kind of quickly, in the interest of time, I'm going to go through our top of mind topics.
Yes.
So please do keep in mind, this is one of our office hours series of streams, so don't hesitate at any point in time to ask questions about whatever the topic happens to be. Christian is on, and Christian is usually one of my escalation points. So all of the hard questions, we'll get him to we'll get him to answer. But yeah, don't hesitate, regardless of what we're talking about on the stream. Don't hesitate to ask questions. And as is tradition, I like to have a little segment, if you will, up front, that talks about kind of top of mind, timely, relevant things that I think are important for you all, for our audience. So I'm going to share my screen here. Drag your little window of heads around. Yes. So the first thing that I want to talk about here, and kind of all three of these today, are really a continuation of something that we've been talking about for a month and a half now, 2 months now. When did 4.8 come out? It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while. I want to say like 2 months. So if you're not aware, upgrades in the stable channel from 4.7 to 4.8 are still not unblocked. Again, we're on the cusp, but they are finishing out kind of the last set of blockers, at least the blockers that we're aware of. So 4.11, and let me come to the customer. Nope, I want console. So if we come to the console here, and we go to OpenShift and we go to releases. So in 4.8, you can see in fast, we've got 4.8.11 and 4.7.30. So these two versions incorporate a number of fixes for kind of outstanding BZs, outstanding issues that have been blocking upgrades. So I want to highlight the three of those that have been the most significant and just point out that, hey, these are fixed. If you're encountering some issues, this could be why, and you'll want to make sure to update as soon as is reasonable for your organization. So the first one is this internal registry is rejecting the container creation due to a layer mismatch. So this one is specific to it is a RHEL kernel bug, which remember CoreOS uses RHEL, the RHEL kernel. CoreOS is RHEL. So it is a kernel bug with CephFS. So specifically, if you're using CephFS, man, I can't talk.
Can I write that down for you?
No, and no, I'm not going to say it like 10 times fast because that won't help.
Either, it gets worse, right?
Yeah.
as it goes.
Means I'm either under or over caffeinated. So this one came up. You can see it was opened the end of the end of August. So this one came up. They fixed it. We should be good on, again, I think it's 4.8.10 was the first one, or 29 was the first one to include this. But they're kind of lumping all of these into the 11 and 30 releases. So if you encountered any issues with that, again, please be sure to update as soon as possible. The next one, and this one was definitely much more broad, Creo having a leak in the runfs, so /runfs. So this one was first found in 4.9. It turned out to also be an issue in earlier versions, so they backported that. So if we scroll, this one has a long comment chain. But if we end up all the way down here at the bottom, you can see 4.10, 4.11 is when it is fixed. So definitely be aware of, cognizant of, that you will probably have to, if you have long running nodes that meet the various conditions inside of here, you may have to reboot those occasionally in order to reset it. But if you update to 4.10 or later, 4.8.10, not 4.10, 4.8.10 or later, that one is fixed, as well as whatever the equivalent version in 4.7. If I scroll up here slightly, it looks like it may be 27, 4.7.27 or later. And last but not least, we have an issue that is near and dear to my heart, because this one was also, or a very similar one, was also an issue with the 4.6 to 4.7 upgrades in the early updates. And that is a issue with VMX-Net 3 network adapters. So essentially there's an offload issue that happens with later versions of, and you can see here, virtual machine hardware, which I always thought was a funny oxymoron. So versions later than 14 or 14 and later. So if you deploy by default with vSphere IPI and don't change anything, the OVA ships with hardware version 13. A lot of folks have changed that, have updated the hardware version to 15 or later to be able to use the CSI provisioner. So if you have a default IPI install, you may not be hitting this one. If you've modified it, or if you've done UPI, then you have a high chance of hitting this particular bug. So the issue is effectively you'll see some packet loss happening inside of the cluster. As before, the resolution is to turn off the offload. So the first time it was the VXLAN offload. This time the solution is this IP generic transaction, or transmission checksum IP generic. So this KCS, and I'll link if we haven't been. So I'll link all three of these that we're talking about. Yeah, no worries.
Terrible at linking today.
No worries. I'm just going to paste all three of these BZ, or two BZs and the KCS in there. So if you look at the KCS, it walks through exactly how to work around this if you don't want to wait for 4.8.11 to make it into stable. But yeah, that's all I got for today. Kind of quick and straightforward, because I want to give Christian plenty of time. Which, Chris, you pointed out to me this morning that actually today's topic is a double header.
Yes,
it is.
Yeah. So Christian, we're going to talk about it here in this context of OpenShift administration, and then we will have a PM and an engineer on this afternoon to talk about bring your own Windows hosts at 1 p.m. Eastern, 1700 UTC. So double header Windows host.
That's right. You get the first, you get the TMM, and then you get the PM after. So if you are if you're interested in hearing the vision behind it, stay tuned.
Yeah,
should we make it a competition? Like,
yeah, let's see who gets more views.
Well, so I don't think that's fair, because like literally Anand was like, hey, I want to get this tomorrow. And I was like, okay, fine.
who shows it better? No.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we got to have some fun, We'll see. When they're both done, let's
gamification.
Then.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the level up guys. They're all about the internet points. Yeah.
Yes,
sweet internet points.
Yeah, there's actually a tie for the lead there as of this morning. So it's kind of nice.
All right. Well, so that concludes, or that is all of the top of mind topics that I have. So we will certainly move on to Christian and today's topic, which we've not been shy about talking about Windows nodes. So the first thing I want to bring up here, or ask you, Christian, is Windows nodes aren't new. We've supported Windows nodes since at least 4.7 in a GA status.
Yeah.
But it was limited. So what we're talking about now is an expansion of capabilities, right? It's less limited than it was before. So
yeah. So before, it was really constrained to, at first it was just the hyperscalers, right? And it was just AWS and Azure that you were able to run Windows Node. So it was even constrained even further, was it had to be an IPI installation. Which is kind of the first step to everything, right? We want to get everything completely automated and making sure that it's up there with functionality with the Linux nodes in terms of the IPI install. And then there is also the later on in 4.7, we did the vSphere IPI. So it's nothing new, right? I came on the show before. We talked about Windows nodes and how all that works out. So we're getting excited for this next release of the WMCO, which is the Windows Machine Config Operator.
I always pronounce it WMCO in my head.
WMCO, yeah.
WMCO.
Nice. Now I will,
this.
right?
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
The WMCO. So the WMCO, the next release, which is due at the end of the month or beginning of October. I mean, we're always in OpenShift land, right? Like we're always like it probably will be released if everything's pretty good, which is kind of a for our Red Hat customers, that's kind of like a weird thing because with RHEL, it's always been like the same cadence, and when we say it'll be released, it's released. But so the WMCO is the next release will be at the end of this month. So hopefully in a few weeks, we're adding what we call bring your own host, right? Or so this is the idea for the UPI installations. So the UPI specifically for the bare metal installs. So we're bringing support for the bare metal, or as more specific, platform agnostic UPI install. Right, more specific, right? Platform none UPI install. So we're bringing that functionality to where you're able to add a Windows node outside of the machine configs, right? So the machine API. Because with the IPI install, you need to make a machine set, right, in order to get a Windows node. Now, we're doing the UPI version of this.
So just to be clear, this is any UPI. So if you have a vSphere UPI or maybe a Rev UPI deployment, or just specifically to the platform agnostic non-integrated platform equals none UPI.
So it is for all UPI, right? So it's for all UPI installs. So not just the platform agnostic non-integrated UPI install, but also what I'll be kind of just going over and demoing is the vSphere UPI. So which is kind of interesting. So I think this version breaks the mold a little bit of what we can say, because this is technically a vSphere IPI install, but I'm adding a UPI Windows node into the mix, which will be supported.
Which is perfectly valid, by the way.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realize that. We've talked about it a couple of times here on the stream, but you can deploy an IPI cluster and you can add nodes outside of machine sets.
Yes.
What did I do that for? I did a proof of concept for moving the IPI load balancer to an external load balancer. I tested that extensively and it works quite well. Not the load balancer part, the adding nodes outside of machine sets. The load balancer part does work, but it's not supported.
So that's kind of like the gist of Windows containers, bring your own host. So I prepared kind of like a demo. Like I was telling Andrew, we'll walk through some of the steps, but I have, like I said, since it's a cooking show, I prepared some stuff like offhand, so that way we're not just watching screens go by. So let me first share my screen, and I'll do.
So Christian, while you're bringing that up, are there any other changes to the Windows machine config operator or the capabilities kind of requirements of those Windows nodes? Like I assume we still need OpenShift or OVN-Kubernetes with hybrid overlay. Are we able to domain join Windows nodes?
No. So this will actually be the first step in that. So the first step was, let me know if you can see my screen as I move stuff around.
It's a little small, but yes, we can.
Oh, let me make that bigger. Yeah.
Thank you.
So kind of the prerequisites and that sort of thing, right? So the prerequisites are the same, right? This is kind of like an incremental, I would say, update. The focus was really on bringing Windows nodes that outside of the control of machine sets, right? So it's basically
more flexible.
More flexibility. The flexibility. We still haven't tested, like, I have a Windows server. I want to join to the domain. I want to apply group policy to that. We haven't tested any of that yet, right? So that will be in subsequent releases. But this is like the first step where it's like, okay, I want to spin up a Windows server, on my own terms, so to speak, and join it to the cluster, right? So let me put in, this is the release notes here. It looks like you already did that, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
You're fast on the draw, man. Like, it takes me forever to find some of these things, and you're like pretty good at finding all of these.
I have gotten very good at finding things just based on titles. Searching our docs is something I'm an expert.
You got to have the search shortcut.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to get that. Yeah, man, it's pretty good. So I mean, currently with WMCO version 2. We support, like I said before, AWS, Azure, vSphere. With 3.0, version 3.0, it'll be the UPI installs essentially, right? So it'll be version 3.0 and above. This will change as well. And so this is actually a Kubernetes thing. So let's look at these Windows Server versions.
I also want to point out something that I've seen, and you and I, Christian, have talked about this. Windows versions are confusing because like you and I have been on meetings with customers before, and we say, oh, it's Windows 2004 or 2004.
2004, yeah.
Which
is it's easy to say but not to write, because people get confused when you write it.
But it's also, most of us think of like Windows Server 2003, not 2004, right? Which is really, and you can see in the like Kubernetes docs there, right? Which is really Windows Server 2019 version 20H2, just with a different it's so
so it's so it's a little confusing, right? So, heretofore we said, all right, your Windows Server 2019 version 2004, or when you write it 2004, they're like, what, is that still supported? No, we mean 2004. Anyways, but now with Kubernetes, as they release here, we're talking about Windows Server 2004, 20H2, I guess. So it's kind of a I guess they changed it. They know that was kind of hard.
Running Windows boxes for the streaming efforts, I've kind of learned a little bit, right? Like the H2 represents a second half of the year, part of updates. So so if you have H1, it's not going to work. If you have H2, it will, kind of thing.
So 2004 is the old naming scheme. It was the April feature update for year 2020. Whereas in the second half of 2020, they switched to the half thing. So, for example, my Windows desktop, sitting over here to my left, I had to think about that. It's embarrassing. Is running Windows 10, I think it's 21H1 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And someone pointed out in chat, Windows Server 2022 is GA, and we do plan to support that in later releases because it includes patches that we desperately need to make some of the other functionalities that we're thinking about working. So, but for now, 2019 version either 2004 or 20H2, I guess they call it. I put this in the chat. This is what's supported, right? So the reason I'm flipping back and forth here between the official docs and kind of like the upstream docs is because I'm demoing, I guess, beta software. so the docs haven't matched what we'll actually support in version 3. So for the Windows versions, 2019, either 2004 or 20H2 will work. Let me go back to the doc. So now some of the networking information, right? So in order to, the prerequisites are the same, right? In order to run Windows containers, you need to install OVN-Kubernetes and configure hybrid networking. So in the docs, if you go to enabling container workloads, the prerequisites are listed here. And one of them has a link to how to configure hybrid networking. There's this big old red exclamation point here. Please read this. Because if you're preparing for Windows containers and Windows nodes, you have to prepare at install time. Like there's no way to install the cluster and then switch it. Like, oh, hey, I want this cluster to run Windows nodes. Then you're out of luck if you didn't do these prerequisites. You have to, it's essentially reinstall, right? So currently, really 2 configurations need to be set here. And then I'll switch over to.
So Christian, I had a question for you, and this one came up internally recently.
Sure.
If, let's say that because we know the hybrid overlay needs to be done at install time and cannot be done afterwards, is there any harm in turning it on and deploying it from day one, even if at this moment I have no intention of deploying Windows nodes?
Yeah, so there's no harm in turning it on because hybrid configuration, it'll sit there, but it's not doing anything until you add something that supports hybrid overlay networking. I think the only other thing is that uses that. I think it's the F5 plugin. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me. There's something else that uses the hybrid configuration, but it'll basically sit there dormant. And if you're using OVN-Kubernetes, that's going to be the default anyway. So I guess you'll be ahead of the curve. So, so here I have, like I said, I pre-installed. Get the version here, 8.2, right? I guess there's an update, but it works with 8.2. If you get nodes, the Kubernetes folks, /os equals Linux, right? It'll just list all the Linux nodes. You can actually, you see here, no funny business. So hopefully I don't pull a Sully here. I'm gonna look at my install config. Yeah, I'm gonna file here.
Pull a Sully. Well, at least you know how to do it now.
I love being a verb. It's
great
to be a verb.
So don't pull a Sully, right? So here, so this here, I'm going through like kind of the prerequisites and how it's installed. If I look at the install config, as you can see, it takes that away from me, your pull secret. Here, under networking, you'll have network type set to OVN-Kubernetes. So that needs to be set in the install config file. And then the other thing is, let me get the network. I always have to copy and paste this command here. So I think you have to set hybrid overlay networking, right? Which is, ooh, that looks ugly. Where is it? There it goes. So there it is. So hybrid overlay networking basically says that, hey, when here's the IP address range for that hybrid overlay networking configuration. This here is the VXLAN port. This, if you're on vSphere, it has to be changed, right? So you have to change it because of a bug, or else containers won't be able to communicate with each other, which is probably what you want. So this needs to be changed. This is all called out in the documentation, right? It goes through the steps here, like this here. It even calls out this VXLAN port. Important to note that it must be set for vSphere, but it must not be set
for others.
Or others, right? So it's kind of like, if you're not on vSphere, it's not harmless, it's harmful if you set this. So just keep that in mind. So I can't say this enough. Please read the docs.
Christian, I'm going to pause you because we've got a couple of questions, and I have one for you as well.
Yeah.
So first from Alosadag. So question from last week about Edge. So I understand that schedulable control plane nodes are supported in compact clusters. Why are they not schedulable in non-compact clusters? And is it not suggested to do so? So when you deploy a non-compact or a standard cluster, we don't have schedulable control plane nodes by default, simply because we want to dedicate those resources. We assume that those are sized, especially with an IPI deployment. It sizes those according to the expected workload. So, of course, if you are deploying, say, bare metal, and you have nodes that are, massive, and by bare metal I mean bare metal to physical servers, not bare metal the non-integrated method. You can absolutely mark those control plane nodes as schedulable on day one or at install time. And you can do that kind of two ways. So one, with IPI, if you mark and actually I don't know if it's supported to do it that way, although it does technically work. And that would be to declare 0 control plane nodes. Alternatively, you can do in your install config.yaml. So you have 3 control plane nodes, 3 compute nodes, and then you do an OpenShift install generate manifests, and it will spit out in 2 folders, it will spit out a bunch of files. And in one of those is a file where you can mark the control plane as schedulable. And all of those, just for kind of side information, all of those files become what goes into the Bootstraps install config, or ignition file rather. Mm-hmm. So yes, you can absolutely use schedulable control plane nodes with a traditional deployment. You can deploy standard, 6-node IPI deployment, go in day 2, mark the control plane node or the control plane as schedulable, and then you can scale worker nodes down to 0 if you want, and then scale up if you need to. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Whether or not it's suggested is really completely up to you and your environment, your workload. So what I mean by that is, if you have, say, a cluster that's 100 nodes, or a cluster that has thousands of pods inside of it, where etcd is going to be busy, the API services are going to be busy, you may want to make sure that there's not just random workload running on the control plane, so that way it can have access. It has all of the resources it needs, because if the control plane, and especially etcd, is struggling for resources, the whole cluster is going to have a bad time. But if you have light workload, if you want to have kind of a scale to 0 type of thing and scale up from there, for burstability or whatever it happens to be, absolutely, use schedulable masters. Is OSSM, so OpenShift Service Mesh, still slightly funky with OVN-Kubernetes?
Yes.
I believe is
yes.
I thought it was fixed already.
It might be.
I remember asking them about that. rHope9, I think it was you who reached out to me, and I asked the PMs about that. So I thought it was fixed, although it is a very recent fix.
Yeah.
It might be one of those things where it's fixed upstream, right? In the upstream, what is it called? Madastra, whatever our upstream version of Red Hat Service Mesh.
Yeah.
And it might not come down. Oh yeah, here it goes. Coming in 2.1. Okay.
And then so Heikel, my apologies for butchering names. I'm terrible at them. So can you please elaborate on hybrid network? And that is more or less the same question I was going to ask you, Christian, which is, what does the hybrid network actually do? And I think it's important, like just looking at the config, it's important to highlight 2 things here. So one, OVN-Kubernetes uses Geneve as the overlay technology, whereas the hybrid appears to use VXLAN. So I am now at the end of my knowledge of what hybrid network means. So
yeah. So so from, without getting too deep, right? Because I don't think any of us are really deep networking experts here.
DNS, yes, but
DNS,
network.
yes, but like, once you get below layer 4, I'm kind of useless. But so high level is that OpenShift has a software defined network, right? The SDN. Currently, we're using OVN-Kubernetes for that software defined network. When you install Windows Node, it installs its own software defined network. It has its own, almost like it's isolated, right, from the rest. So the hybrid configuration is basically creates a layer 3. I don't want to call it a bridge. I guess route. I guess would be the best way to call it. Gateway, whatever. I'm probably getting the terminology all wrong. But it creates basically a layer 3 communication tunnel between this service network and this other service network. So that way you can deploy Windows workloads that can communicate with the Linux workloads over, the native Kubernetes methods, right, with service, right? So then you can refer to something as the service name. The local resolver will resolve it, right? Core DNS will resolve it. Yeah. And the networking just automatically works, right? So just from a high level, the hybrid cluster is it's essentially that, the hybrid, right? You have 2 software-defined networks, and the hybrid basically connects them together.
Yeah, I'm curious, and I'm gonna take a note to ask the folks. Are we putting VXLAN on top of Geneve, or are they running in parallel to each other? And just Windows nodes talk to the rest on, VXLAN, and Linux nodes talk to the rest on Geneve, or what does that actually look like?
That's a good question. We'd have to ask the networking folks for that. That's for sure.
Well, I know a couple of those guys, so we'll definitely reach out. We'll see if we can get an answer to that.
We might know a few people.
Yeah, we might know a few. So all that configuration stuff, right? Like if you want to configure it, is in the docs. So again, set up hybrid overlay networking for your north, south, east, west networking to work. So 5 easy steps.
Sorry.
Right.
Our Hope 9 says Geneva is a tunnel protocol. So there you go, Christian.
There you go. Tunnel protocol. I thought it was a city in like Switzerland or something. Anyways, okay.
God. It's Geneva.
Oh, okay. So once
Christian, he's in California.
Yeah. So once the cluster's installed, as you see here, it's a normal OpenShift v4 4.8 cluster. So once you've installed that, you have to install the WMCO operator. So that's easy enough, right? If you go to Operator Hub, again, you're a kube admin, and just type in Windows, which feels really weird, right? This whole on a Red Hat system, type Windows.
Yeah.
How far we've grown.
And then on the Windows system, go cat ETOS release and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So here, I had the community operator. So for those of you who are using on 4.8 today and who are using OKD, the community operator supports this, right? So I have that installed. It's that version here. So, but when this GA is obviously use the GA release, but I'm using the community operator that's installed. And then one last prerequisite, right? So once you install the cluster with the networking prerequisites, once you install the WMCO, the WMCO, you need to, let me see if I can find it here. Let me go back. Prerequisites, here we go. So the last thing is you have to provide an SSH key, right? So you have to create an SSH key pair, right? Private public key. Here, I'll actually anchor link that here in the chat. So a couple of things to note, right? This is just just a standard SSH key. You have to upload the private key to OpenShift, and you need to use this key. You need to use the public key. You need to load that into your Windows node, which I'll show in a second how you'll load that into the Windows node. Last thing I want to call out is that you need it's one key per cluster. So there's no way to say, hey, this Windows node has this key, this Windows node has this other key. You know, you can't have multiple keys. So currently it's one key per cluster. I have asked about this because my first question when I was testing this is like, okay, well, can we have multiple keys, right? Because a lot of the times, I would imagine administrators would want to have separate keys, wanted to be able to rotate keys. So that's all in, you know, backlog. That'll be addressed, right? Because I've created a couple of RFEs around that. So now, you know, prerequisites, install the WMCO operator, upload your SSH key. So and if I do OC get, that gets uploaded in a secret OpenShift Windows machine config operator, that's the cloud private key, right? So that's the SSH key. I won't expose that because that's an actual private key that I actually use in my actual day-to-day, but trust that it's there. So once you have those installed, really the prerequisites for the OpenShift is the easy part, I guess, for me, maybe because I'm a Linux guy, Kubernetes guy. This all was easy to follow. The hard part was actually, let me make this a little bigger, was actually preparing the Windows node. So this actually took me a little while. Administrator. And then whatever my password is. Okay. No whammies. All right, cool. So then I always get these little exclamation points. Maybe as Andrew can explain these because I'm gonna reset these.
It's just
it's okay.
It's just using a bunch of CPU. All of them are at 8 and 9 gigahertz. So
ooh. It has a lot of CPU. Control plane's busy.
A lot.
Doing what control plane does.
And so here I have a Windows node. So we need to prepare the Windows node to become an OpenShift node. So as you see here, I installed the VMware tools or whatever on here. You can go ahead and do that. That's, you know, normal workflow. I don't know how to make this any bigger, so sorry. Oh, there it goes. How do I sign in? So as you see here, I don't have the GUI because that's just like the ISO that was given.
I'm pretty sure it's the same ISO to install the GUI.
Yeah,
core.
How do I bring up the CLI here?
You gotta.
It just gives me this.
What? That's weird.
I don't know. I'm not a server core user.
Me either.
Okay, let's do this here.
Control.
There we go.
Unlock. There you go.
What was the password? Welcome, administrator. Okay.
And then it handily closes that window for you.
And then it just handily does close that window. How do I get this? There has to be some sort of. Here, let's do this. Sully's gonna laugh at me. Power off, yes.
Oh, okay.
Force off, come on.
Oh, wow. Forcing off a Windows node.
That always ends well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, wasn't it? We always avoided forcing Linux nodes off because of file system corruption risk, but NTFS was always pretty resilient to that.
Well, they say, well, the Windows fix is to restart it, right? Because so
like
it probably got that, like it probably needed to be resilient in reboots. I would imagine.
Yeah, something's wrong with my Windows box. Well, have you rebooted it yet?
Yeah. Have you tried turning it off and on again? All right, let's see if it closes now. There we go. Cool.
Hey.
And then I always go into PowerShell.
You weren't wrong.
I wasn't wrong, right? So here, I'm actually gonna go through. I always hate doing this. So I go to I think you posted the GitHub page. You need to do a few things to prepare the node. So let's go. There's a prerequisites here, right? So I'll open this window here, make this a little bigger. So first you need to, this is a prerequisites for build your own host. I'll put it in the chat here. This will actually eventually make it up to the official doc. So
yeah.
First you need to install Docker. So that
to be clear,
mhm.
What is this tech preview GA? What level of releaseness is of?
This is, I guess, beta. It's community. It's a community operator. So
WMCO 2 is GA. WMCO 3 is beta/community, but will be GA shortly.
Yeah. So keep in mind, if you're trying to do what's on screen right now, before that 3.0 goes GA, you're going to have problems. And if you call support, they're not going to be able to help you, or they'll try their best, but they might not be able to solve the problem completely. So be careful. That's all I need to say.
So I always go, I always look at the scripts that how do I say this in such a way? I always look at the scripts that the engineers use for their CI process. However, these scripts aren't supported. I know it sounds weird. These are the scripts that Red Hat uses to test the thing that we are supporting, but you using these scripts directly isn't supported. So,
and Christian, because I think this is a question you probably answer regularly. Right now we use Docker for Windows. Is there any plan for a Cryo for Windows?
Yeah.
Windows. So Microsoft is planning on using Containerd. So it'll eventually move away from Docker to Containerd. So the best way
is OCI compliant, so should work.
Yep. Should work just fine. So this is something that Sully showed me, right, while testing this out. If you enable what is it, PSR remoting, this allows you to use PowerShell remotely, so that way you don't have to connect to live in this little console world, right? So here, what I like doing is I like doing podman run PowerShell. Where's it? It's in my history, right? So you can actually run PowerShell in a container.
Nice.
And this is all. So then all you need to do is have IP config. So this is 1.55, right? So let's just all remember that. And then, let me copy and paste my notes here because I do have notes. Okay, you enter this, which is equivalent to SSH. There we go, administrator. Go. Cool, I'm in, right? So I'm in there. And let's install Docker, right? So I go to the scripts. So first you have to install Docker. So let's go to Docker, right? And you can essentially just copy and paste that here.
So Christian, in the interest of time, because we got about 5 minutes.
Do we?
I know.
Okay.
Do you want a cooking show this one?
Yeah. Okay, so you install Docker, Docker, SSH, right? Because the WMCO operator uses SSH. You have to open a few firewall port rules. And you have to add the SSH key, right? So the SSH key, you got to make sure the SSH, when you install SSH, you got to make sure the SSH key that you gave the operator is on the host. And here, this is something weird for Windows admins, right? For us Linux guys, it's like whatever, but you can only have lowercase host names. So what does that mean? That means that the, let me go back to, so if I keep this as this uppercase, it'll just barf, right? So you have to change the host name for this host to lowercase, right? It's whatever you want as long as it's lowercase. So as Sully said, in the interest of time, I have prepared a node ahead of time with all the prerequisites already loaded up, right? And so in order to, let me exit out of this here. So in order to add a Windows node, you have to create a bring your own host node. You have to create a config map called Windows instances, right? So here, you name, it has to be named Windows instances, and it has to be in the same namespace as the operator. And essentially, you just give it IP address and the username, right? So this is, for future, right? Like if you have, Windows admin, right, in your Active Directory, and that happens to be the admin, you can do that future proofing, right? Here, what is the IP address actually for my first Windows node?
92.
Is it 92?
It's on the.
Yeah, it's right here. I was like, how does he know it's 92? So you just give it. So there's currently a bug. You should be able to put the FQDN, but right now that doesn't 100% work. So the IP address is what we have to use. Right, OC apply Windows instances. And then, oops, OpenShift Windows machine. So there's that operator, and then you can logs that guy. And this actually takes doesn't take long at all. It actually takes longer for the machine set way, because you have the machine set actually creates the machine for you, whereas this is already up and running. Getting a few Go errors. This is probably something. Yeah, no, I mean it usually doesn't mean an error, even though there's like
it's
a
just
Go dump.
displaying like standard out or something.
Yeah, it's probably because machine operator unable to get. Okay, yeah, that was an old config there. It was barfing at an old config. So then I usually just tail these logs, and these logs will tell you that it's installing here. So this will take, I don't know, like 2 minutes or so.
You've got
to set up the operator. So
less than.
So is
2 minutes.
So so here I'm pausing to see if there's any questions.
So have any of the other, like, do we still recommend that you pre-pull the container base images to that Windows node?
Yeah, good question. Yes. So here, if I always never get that right. If I do Docker images, I pre-pulled the image specific to this version of Windows. So for Windows, it matters, right? So like we've been kind of spoiled in the Linux world where, hey, I'm just going to pull an Ubuntu image and run it on OpenShift and it runs fine. The same is not true for Windows. If you try to run a, I don't know, Server 2016 image on this Windows 2019, it just flat out doesn't work.
And what's the reason for that? And I asked because the reason when you told me, it made perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, because the kernel version, right? Because
no, I mean why we pre-pull them. Sorry.
Oh, right. You pre-pull them. Okay.
Yeah.
If you pre-pull them, because if you see here, this is 50 gigs in size. 50 gigs. 5 gigs in size. And it just, in most environments, that just takes a while to pull. The default timeout is 2 minutes, right? So anything that takes longer than 2 minutes to pull, the scheduler will say error, and then it'll try to pull again, and error, it'll try to pull again. It'll basically just loop forever because the image will never get pulled because of the timeout. So
maybe if you have really fast internet, it'd be fine, and confidence in Microsoft's image.
Yeah, or you have a local image, right? Local image registry, or do what most of us do and just kind of just pre-pull it. That makes the most sense.
So we're at the top of the hour. If you can spend 5 minutes to answer the question from RR Productions, or 5 seconds rather, how is Rosa doing with Windows nodes?
It's on the roadmap, right?
Yeah.
So right now, because of the prerequisites for networking, Rosa still uses OpenShift SDN. So I know it's on their roadmap. I know they're all the hosted, right, the OpenShift hosted solutions are planning on eventually supporting this, right? Just because it's a thing of like preparing, right? We need to have SREs, right? We need to have support people on there to be able to. We need to essentially ramp them up.
So we are now 1 minute over, which means that we need to drop for the next stream.
Yeah.
We will have some more Windows Node goodness happening in an hour. Version 2 or the next iteration, if you will. That being said, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for a great first year of the Ask an OpenShift Admin Office Hour. Really appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for all of the questions, interaction. I hope that this is useful to you. Don't ever hesitate to send us feedback, questions, requests, etc. You can reach me at andrew.sullivan@redhat.com or on Twitter at practicalandrew. All one word, just like you've seen me in the Twitch chat there. So join us next week. Next week we will have Rob Zumsky on, along with some of the engineering folks to talk about API deprecations. So
nice. Yes,
favorite topic.
Finally get to talk about that.
Yeah,
on air. Good.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. See you soon, folks.
All right.